everybody, and welcome again to the Fixing Football podcast. I'm your host, Martin Naylor, and alongside me is Liam O'Meara and Luke Foley. This week we got into a topic that seems to be a little bit of a conversation that's rising in the background. We got into the topic of homegrown players and the rise in the numbers of foreign influence on the game. So we got into that. Before we do crack on with the episode, I wanted to thank everyone who's joined in with the Fantasy Premier League that we set up. There's over 100 players in that, which is really good going. Thank you to everyone who also joined in the Super 6 League. I didn't win £1 million this week, but I hope you did. Thank you also to everyone who is listening and sharing with your friends. It really does mean a lot to us. You can find all our information on fixingfootballpodcast.com. All the links are there. But please do keep on liking and sharing and following wherever you're listening. It really does help. Thanks again, everyone, and let's crack on with the episode. Good day, fellas. Luke Foley, how are you?
Not too bad, Martin. How are you?
I'm good, mate. Liam, how's it going?
Very well, thank you, Martin. Very well.
All good.
Good win for Arsenal and Bolton this weekend.
Very good. Seeing as though Man United haven't played yet at the time of this recording, let's just go and agree that Arsenal are probably in the league. I think everyone's in agreement at that. No? Eye rolls from the crowd. Liam, Bolton another win?
Yeah. That's 3 out of 3 now. So we are looking amazing, to be completely honest. The only concern now is that with our good start and goals coming very easy for us, that people want our best players. So we've had a George Thomason linked with a move to Bristol City, a £1 million bid accepted today. And we've turned that down. The players turned it down, decided that Bolton in League One, with everything that's going on there, is a bigger, better place to be than his career than Championship Bristol City. So I think that's a pretty good sign of things to come. That's someone who's not even starting in the Bolton squad, but would rather be there. And we've also had interest for our striker Dion Charles today from both Stoke and Watford. And, you know, it'd be frustrating if he went, but it also does show you that we are moving in the right direction. And there's always other players out there that you could sign. Once you've got a side that's like we are now, you'll always be able to attract good players. So very happy with how things are going.
Liam, if you lost Dion Charles, would it be panic stations for Bolton?
Not panic stations, but we'd need to replace him because he's fundamental to how we play, particularly with the pressing side of things. Defensively, he is very, very important. So not panic stations, but not great, obviously, when you lose your number 9.
Who's the backup?
There's no like for him. We've got other players that we can play up front. People like Adebayo and Jon David Varson and Dan and Lunderloo that can all play up front. But there's no one like Dion Charles. So I imagine if we lost Dion, we'd probably have to go back into the market.
So if you do lose him, and this is probably in our chat where I mentioned that you had a cup game during the week and you said, look, we still want to progress in the cup. Would that change your thoughts in kind of saying, like, okay, we'll just concentrate on the league if you lose a player like him?
We won't sell him without replacing him or having something lined up. There's just no way we would. I don't think he'd be kicking the door down to leave to go to either of those clubs, to be completely honest. I would think that if we can't get a replacement, we would tell him he can go at the end of the season if we can get a similar bid. I don't think we sell him with anyone lined up. Did you have a question there, Martin? I can see with your hand up.
No, I didn't have a question, mate. Luke, you tell me what's going on.
I'd just like to ask you about Arsenal's performance, just because it did seem in the last 15 minutes it was a bit of a nervous time. Just wondering your thoughts about that.
I think it looked like we got super comfy, and it looked as though as soon as Nottingham Forest decided that we couldn't absolutely batter them 20-0, they decided to go for it. They brought Alanga on, They changed the forward. I can't remember the guy's name up front. Just put a bit of pressure on us. We took it easy. I think it's poor finishing, not getting enough shots away, but it's still early doors. I'm probably more concerned about Timber's injury because he looks like he's settled in really well, but that's looking like another ACL that seems to be the topic of the injury world at the moment, which is something I'd like to bring up at another point. Something I wanted to bring up today was there was a stat out recently, and it was about the influx of foreign players in the Premier League, the sort of the ratio of what the English to sort of foreign exports in the Premier League, with the Premier League being higher than anywhere else in Europe, the top league by some way. Really, it's closing on 70% in favour of foreign players over English. First of all, I wanted to get your thoughts on that, and secondly, I want to discuss what you sort of think any changes we can make. Liam, tell us about well, first of all, where you stand on that, and what you think of them stats coming out, and how people have perceived that.
I'm quite conflicted when it comes to this issue, and I always have been, because I do think that it can be quite damaging to the game to have too many non-domestic players playing in England, particularly at the very top table of, with regard to the Premier League. Having said that, there's nothing wrong with having the best players in the best league in the world at our doorstep. So we're going to need to get into things in a bit more detail, I think, rather than sort of on the higher level. And obviously, that's why we're doing a podcast. But with regards to that, I'm always going to be conflicted. I mean, I don't know what you think, Martin.
Well, just for the sake of the stats, the English Premier League come up as 67.9% in terms of foreign talent, or overseas talent, however you want to put it. Serie A was the next highest of what you'd say the classical top leagues are, with 60%. Bundesliga was just about 50%, and then La Liga, which I guess people would generally consider the second best league in Europe, was at 41%. So 59% of homegrown talent in that country, and we've seen their success over the recent years, especially internationally. Luke, what do you make of how the balance has shifted over the years, and what might have brought that on?
Money. I think the Premier League offers higher wages and higher transfer fees and agents' fees incorporated into that. I think that's what's bringing all the kind of foreign players into the Premier League, and it's worked well for the Premier League because the last couple of years we've seemed to have an English team, well, sort of English team in the Champions League final for the last 5-6 years. So I think it's a benefit, but are we losing the identity of the top teams? Are we losing connection with the fans? I think we're turning into a league where it's my billion squad versus your billion squad, and personally, I don't agree with that. I think it's detrimental to homegrown players and maybe the enjoyment of watching it. I think it comes a bit synthetic in a way. So I think I'm on Liam said obviously he's a bit 50-50 with it, but I think I'm on the other scale of where I kind of want to go back to the old ways with the old teams. The teams that we grew up with, where the kind of star players and the people driving the teams were the English. So your Gerrards, your Castle United too. I think we've all got to agree that kind of period is. We always kind of talk about that. Oh, do you remember that team and things like that? I think there's more emphasis or more likable era than it is currently, and maybe
I disagree. I think I get what you mean. I think people like to romanticize the past, but I don't. I like Arsenal's team of past because they were winning stuff. I don't like them because they were any more English or not than the current setup.
So the current setup's more English than the previous one,
isn't
it?
More English, yeah. We've made it a point since sort of that period to have more of a homegrown base.
But would you not say you Arsenal was the first kind of introduction to kind of the foreign way, I suppose, with Wenger and his French connection?
Yeah, maybe, but it was always coming. There was foreign players that in the league a long time before Arsene Wenger showed up. I don't see an issue with this. My argument has always been that the best will rise to the top. The cream will rise to the top, as they say. And that if we want the best league in the world and want to continue that being the case, then I think that it needs to be embraced in that way. Liam, the globalization of football talent is what we're talking about.
Well, essentially, the world is getting smaller. Not actually, but in terms of direction of travel. People can move more freely between countries. Essentially, costs are lower, and it is easier to do nowadays. Football's just following the same trajectory as the rest of the world, really. I work for a company in Manchester City Centre where a good proportion of the staff are international staff. It's a reflection of what's going on in the world, particularly in high talent industries. So I suppose the difficult part with it is essentially when you're mixing cultures and difficulties with and where that comes in. So there's been a lot of talk about Moises Caicedo in the last couple of days. Roll back 2 years ago with this transfer that is being heralded by Brighton. That involved dealing with third-party ownership at the time, which is something that in the European game is simply banned. So there are issues with involving it. I believe that's why Manchester United sort of washed their hands of it at the time. It's been thrown in Manchester United's face a little bit that they moved away from that transfer, but I believe it was third-party ownership that they didn't want to deal with.
Yeah, I don't think they were on their own as well, though. I think he was being shopped around.
Yeah, it wasn't. When he eventually moved to Brighton, it wasn't a name I wasn't unheard of. I'd heard it pop up on various podcasts for about 18 months. Moises Caicedo. It wasn't a surprise to see how well he's done because he was so highly regarded. There was loads of clubs after him. But I suppose Chelsea, while we're talking about Chelsea, we'll just touch on that. I mean, you've got essentially a huge amount of non-domestic players that have gone in there that are seen now potential Conor Gallagher maybe are being touted as someone to sell to raise funds on. I mean, does he go to then a lesser level Premier League club? I suppose this is the challenge of it. You know, where do the domestic players sit in the pyramid? You know, Kieran Tierney, for example, I know he's not English, but he's Scottish, and when we say domestic, that's the same thing.
Yeah,
here.
British, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So he's now feeling like he has to move, essentially, because Zinchenko's been brought in. These are the challenges, and yeah, by all means, have absolutely the best product in the world. But it's interesting when you look at La Liga's stats on that, isn't it? You know, what are they? 39%. Where essentially, I don't think it'd have been too different from that back when they dominated. But is that skewed by at the time their, you know, Catalonia and Madrid, by, you know, the fact that they had so many players coming from that academy? Every country's going to have different.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, that's the thing. The argument against it is, does this decrease? And Luke, you run me through this. What you think? But does this decrease opportunity? Does the increase in clubs like Chelsea, for example, running wild with talent from all over the world, all over Europe, filling multiple clubs up with these talents, by the way, does this decrease the opportunity for their academy lads, which has been really successful? I mean, on one hand, they're going out spending 115 million on Caicedo, but they've also promoted Levi Colwill, who's had a couple of steps through the ranks and successful loans. So, I mean, there's a little balance just in one club, though. I mean, you tell me what you think about
that. It depends. Well, at the end of the day, the top teams, all they're interested in is winning trophies. Now, are they going to look abroad and bring in the best players and to obviously win to help them win the trophies? And that's where they're going to do. Now, again, if you are saying the cream of the crop always rises, so are these English players?
with the crap rise to the top?
I suppose. Are these English players better than the foreign players coming in? Personally, I think we're just going to get to that phase in a few years where it's one English or domestic player in each of the top 5 teams. And personally, I don't want that.
I'm gonna go into this a little bit more with you, Luke, because it was you that wanted to discuss this, and I think it's a good topic. When you talk about identity, and you're obviously concerned about this idea of, I would say, iconic British players, that leadership types, sort of your almost archetypal Steven Gerrards, John Terry's, Irish but Roy Keane types, being at the forefront of the clubs. What is it about that you miss? And is there still room for that in the modern game?
Well, let's just look at internally with United as a prime example. I think the past 10 years or so, we've had a massive influx of domestic players, not domestic, foreign players come in, and basically then they have turned into the leaders. So, for instance, Fernandes is captain now. Now, you're telling me that Keane would have accepted all the shenanigans of what's been going on the last 10 years and how players down tools. Is that because there is no connection to the club because they're coming from a foreign country? So they're not United. They're not United supporters. They don't grow up supporting United. So are these foreign players coming in? Are these foreign players coming in and just not understanding the culture and how much it means to like the local area and the whole kind of aspect of the fan base? Are we losing it? Would the class of '92 have accepted all these troubles and the rats that's been going to the press and saying that would that have been accepted? And I think maybe that is a foreign influence, and that's kind of my thoughts. Why I'm thinking maybe we should have a local player that has potentially supported United or whoever team that they play for to be one that's driving the culture in a club.
Is this not down to the guy at the top of the mountain in each club, whether that be the guy front and centre, which you're talking about, Ten Hag, or is it the chairman of the board or the owners of the club? They create that culture trickling down. We're just in a different era. We're in a modern day where managers aren't going to get 10, 12 years to have a go at a Premier League or something like that. They're going to get 2 at best. And if things are on the right track, maybe they get 3 and 4. Look at Klopp now. I
was going to say, it's worth pointing out as well that Chelsea just made Reece James captain.
Yeah.
And also, Jordan Henderson was captain of Liverpool for how long?
Yeah, so that on that point though, Liam, they are well, let's talk the Reece James kind of point. Is he ready to kind of be the forefront, and is he experienced enough? Is he kind of going to be driving the culture in Chelsea? Now, on the other side of that, with Liverpool, with Jordan Henderson, he was more experienced. He's obviously come from Sunderland, kind of learned the ropes under Gerrard and things like that. But he's still that English base, and he knows what Liverpool means to the city and things like that.
Luke, do you feel less connected to Man United's team nowadays than you used to do?
Yes, in a way, but we obviously got Rashford, who's kind of the star man. But again, it goes back to the point. He's coming a youngster, been brought in to score goals against you men, if you remember, 2 goals on his debut. But how can he carry how can he carry it all on his shoulders from being that young age and then create the culture in the club? Do you know what I mean? So for instance, Saka, for instance, at Arsenal, do you think he's the leader of Arsenal, driving like this is the Arsenal way, this is what we do? Or again, am I just being old fashioned and thinking the game's changed and it's just everyone's, I don't know.
Yeah,
just
I'll be honest. I'm struggling to sort of see.
I can sort of understand the romanticising of the past in terms of these men who you would look up to when you're 10, 11, 12, these giants of humans, and now approaching our mid-30s, looking at these lads who are off grabbing money all over here, there and everywhere. Do you obviously feel less connected to the hero of these that we looked at as these footballers? And I don't think that, for me anyway, having their nationality is something that ever really came into it.
Players would emerge, by the way. If they had the character, I feel like they would emerge. I'd say Harry Kane fits that mould.
Yeah. I'm not saying that there is a few out there. I'm not saying that it's just completely, but I think if you look at internally my club, I think it's last 10 years, and everyone in the press.
I'd say you've got a decent core. I'd say you've got a decent domestic core because you've got Luke Shaw, who I would say last couple of years has been, I think, consistent in terms of getting more out of what I think of a player he is. He seems to have consistently delivered. You pointed out Rashford, who at times last year was probably the best player in the league, apart from Haaland, obviously. And you've also just signed Mason Mount, who is, I would say, very much a role model type player, not in your Steven Gerrard, like Martin says, giant of a man thing, but in terms of football role model on it, there's Mason Mount sort of ticks a lot of boxes, I would personally say. And
do you not think there needs a local, like, from the area though? I obviously Rashford's in the area, I get that, but do you not think more teams, the top 10 teams, need that local person to be in the squad? And I know you've got Trent at Liverpool as well.
Well, you've mentioned the problem. You mentioned the class of 92. Your academy's still back in 1992. Your academy is awful. Like, I pointed out to you over the summer, that signing that City made from your academy. Growing up, right? Couldn't you imagine someone doing that when we were growing up? Like, when we were playing football and you'd hear about people doing trials and whatever, United was the absolute pinnacle. That was unbelievable. If you heard a kid was playing at United, he was an unbelievable talent. That's not the case now. You're essentially stagnated as a club. And I feel like, and I don't want to dig you out, but I feel like a lot of this comes from your frustrations with your own club, I think. And an identity that I think you've, as a club, not had for quite some time now, which is essentially hard to beat, resolute. You've kind of drifted as a club and you've not got much. And I think Ten Hag will help you get you a bit of an identity. But I think you're seeing problems and manifesting that into this. Well, we've not got a Steven Gerrard type at that. And I get it, because you're looking at people like Keane and Scholes and thinking, oh my God, we would never lose a game with them two in there. But you haven't got that academy anymore.
Yeah, I can see your point, but are we losing tribalism then with the game as well? Like with fans, like,
not at my level. that I go. I mean, I go to Bolton games, and I don't think it's ever been as bad as it is at the moment. So I can't speak for the Premier League. 'Cause I've not been to a Premier League game in years. I think last one I went to was with you, United Everton, a couple of years back when Big Dunk got his draw. So I think that was last Premier League game I went to. But in terms of League One football, absolutely not. No, I don't think. I think the tribalism's never been as bad as when I've been going than it is at the moment.
I've seen. I remember. It's probably early 2000s, but Arsenal were the first Premier League team to field a completely non-homegrown, overseas foreign 11 and bench, and it doesn't make you support them any less. It's not. There's nothing. You're stuck with your club, and that's it. If you just back to going after supporting a certain group of players in
academy players. You do grow an affinity to academy. You will grow an affinity to academy players. We don't get many because we've almost binned our academy off for all intents and purposes. I think we essentially minesweep now anyone that gets released locally, that's a debate for another day. So we don't get many. So I see it that way. I think, I mean, but even the academy lads at United, they're non-domestic, aren't they? You've got Garnacho, Palestri, the others that I can't think of now. We had Shola Shortiri on loan last year. I don't think he'll be pulled up any trees at Man United, to be completely honest. But he's domestic, and you've just let Charlie Savage go to Reading. So you're not getting anyone that's coming through.
That's a quite good point though. What you've made though, Liam, about that. Maybe that's the problem. Like our academy is just influx with foreign players now, so all of their coming through is, and maybe that's we're more focused on bringing foreign youngsters in from different countries.
Can I just say on the record as well that I'm nowhere near words like influx, swarm, and all these other words Luke's using about non-domestic players. I'm nowhere near any of them words. Just want that on the record. What do you think, Martin?
Pick the words and thoughts of Luke Foley alone, not the Fixing Football podcast.
Associated businesses. Martin, so quick question for you. Arsenal do benefit at the moment for having one or two academy players that have made the breakthrough. Bukayo Saka and Martin Ellis brings. I think Martin Ellis was purchased, but then integrated.
Emil Smith-Rowe, Eddie Nketiah, Reece Nelson.
Yeah, good shout. And would you say that these players have more of affinity with the fans? Is it special that they're part of this?
Yeah.
What is a unique Arsenal team?
It is definitely nice to have them. It's like the cherry on the cake almost. It's like, and he's from our academy. It's not a crowbarring in because they're from the academy. And I think that them players are there because they're good enough, which has been my argument all along. The social implications of having, if them four players weren't in the team, if they weren't good enough to be in the team, it wouldn't bother anyone. There'd either be other English talent or there wouldn't be, and the Emirates would still be full and people would still be. And I think
I'd like to see Smith-Rowe go out on loan. By the way, just while you mentioned those, I'd like to see him on loan somewhere. Smith-Rowe. I want to see. Why?
Not this season. I think he's good enough to be challenging for a squad. I have some reservations about Arteta at the moment, but we'll revisit that another time.
Whoa. The main man himself, Mikel Arteta, the greatest manager in football history, top 3 all-time Premier League manager, according to Martin Naylor.
You're just saying words now.
Yeah, I need to know what your reservations are with Mikel Arteta.
Well, it's a little bit. I don't want to stray from the topic too much.
I do. I want to know what they are.
He definitely seems, and this is just going off his selection this weekend and a few things that we've seen in pre-season, but he definitely has his favourites.
This is Havertz, isn't it? I know it's definitely in your head. Havertz.
No.
You're all turning on him because of Havertz. I've seen this. I've seen it happening.
Listen,
He did come out and say he really rated Havertz in that. So that's
Just
what
say
I
it's
said.
Havertz, man. You can
It
say you
isn't.
can be your friends. You can say it's
It's
Havertz.
the defense, the way he set up the defense was the biggest thing for me. Playing, oh God, right? While we're here, playing Thomas Partey right back, Jurien Timber left back, and Ben White and Saliba, and then had a weird sort of flowing four that was inverted on either side. It was fine. It was Nottingham Forest. I don't think he'd have tried that if our first game was City at home.
Like City do with John Stones.
Yeah, like we've been doing with Zinchenko, but we sort of did it from both sides. Which was odd when we had Jakub Kivior, who's had a really good pre-season, and we brought him in January, who people have seem really positive about, but he's not been given much of a chance. They've got Kieran Tierney, looks like he might be getting a move. Just he wasn't even in the matchday squad, so there was no mention of an injury or anything. When that would have been a more obvious sort of starting 11, but we're winning. So there are only quiet reservations right now, but I just think he's some selection favouritism is going to cause some headaches further down the line. What I was getting at is the social and any cultural implications of having an influx of foreign players over the academy lads is only down to quality, as far as I can see. Luke, would you put in a what's the word? A quarter for English players, homegrown players. Would you increase that? I mean, there is some sort of hot quarter, but it's for your full squad of the season. I mean, what would you like to see with that?
I'd go as deep as I'd want a local lad in the starting 11.
What?
Local. What's the radius from the stadium?
Greater Manchester area.
So at Man United, you have to be born in Greater Manchester.
Where's what town's Marcus Rashford from? Let's start there then.
It's
Marcus.
Wimshaw.
He was born on the step of Old Trafford. He's about as mank as you get.
Well, place of birth is Manchester, England. That's not very helpful. But you say it's Withenshaw.
Yeah.
That's Greater Manchester, so he qualifies. So you're all right there. So what about Saka? What borough of London is Saka from?
Oh, well. I don't know, and it doesn't matter.
We're at Bolton.
Through the academy. He's been in the academy since he was 7. It doesn't matter if he was a mile outside of Luke's made-up radius.
But Luke, what about Bolton? Are we Greater Manchester or Lancashire for purposes of radius? Cause
that's political now.
That's going to get tricky for us.
Well, under the law, you're Greater Manchester.
Which side of Rivington are you from?
Yeah. So right. Okay. Yeah, I can't. I think we're struggling then, Luke.
Liam, what would you think about a quarter?
Yeah, I think there should be a homegrown players quota similar to his now. I think that is the best way. I would be tempted to increase the amount of registered younger players. I think too many younger players go out on loan, despite what I said about Emil Smith-Rowe earlier. But yeah, I think there has to be a squad homegrown quota. Yeah.
Luke, we're staying with the radius.
Yeah, I'm.
I
feel as a fan base, you want. I think, like I said, I think there's more connection with someone that's from your area and it's your team and who you support. I think that's. I don't know what's wrong with that. You're wanting someone where you've grown up basically to be in your local team.
What if everyone in your local area is shit? And now they have to play for one of them has to play for Man United.
Well, well, I think we're going on to topics of choice of who you support, but again,
choose another region: East Anglia, Ipswich.
Yeah, and they're all cattle. Well, you have to start cattle up front, or if they're
Yeah, you're both telling me you wouldn't rather someone, a local lad, for instance, Liam with Bolton. Surely you would want a Bolton, someone from Bolton, like leading the Bolton Wanderers. Well, that would be the ideal situation.
Yeah, I suppose, but am I going to set a
You'd feel more
rule
connected,
that
wouldn't you?
they have to be? And then when we play Fleetwood, it has to be a Fleetwoodian. It has to be their captain. No, I think we're getting into the silliness here. We're at Exeter as well. Like no one around there.
They're knackered.
What's the radius of Exeter? I think, Luke, I get what you're trying to do. I just think you're massively wrong. But you know, at least you're trying to fix something, even though it's not broke.
I think I like the quarter that we've got now. I don't think we are going to see the loss of the English game because of any more, even an increase in that percentage of foreign players coming in. Even if it was to go up, I still think England would have a good national side. I mean, that's something we didn't touch on, but does our high percentage of non-home based players affect the English team, the English national team?
Yep. Well, I mean, if you listen to the FA, they don't like it particularly. However, the national team's probably never been in a better position than it is currently. But I think that owes more to the standardisation of it all in St George's Park. I think that when they copied what the French did, I think that's the reason for England's success. I actually do think it doesn't help. Yeah.
Would you call that building a culture?
Yeah, I think from the FA's perspective, when you look at someone like Harry Maguire barely kicking a ball, it's not helpful. And John Stones was the same for years, like in and out of the team, and that was England's centre-back partnership. And whenever someone seemed to squeeze Eric Dyer in there for some reason, so like it can't be helpful. Like Phil Foden, in and out of team pretty much all his career, and it affects him for England because people getting ahead of him, and he sits there wondering why, and everyone's wondering why, but from Southgate's perspective, Mason Mount playing every week at Chelsea versus Phil Foden, who barely gets a kick at City at times. So it does have an effect, I think.
Right. I mean, yeah, I do agree, but I still think that I more agree with your original point that the English team is set up hasn't been in as good a position for a long, long time.
Yeah, it hasn't, and I wonder if it could be slightly better. But the cream does rise to the top, as we keep saying, even though I absolutely despise that saying.
Can't think of another one.
Good things always go high up in the end. So yeah, I think that could be a podcast in itself, but we'd probably not be able to really fix anything with that one. So I think we should stay clear of that.
I'm happy with our fix. I think our fix is maybe tweak the homegrown quarters, but
/ radius players.
Yeah, there needs to be a radius on each Premier League stadium.
Could it be like a nuclear fallout zone where you've got you need 3 in the red and then another 2 that are in the yellow, and then the rest in the green?
You need 1 in the bullseye. One of your players needs to be within 100 yards of the stadium.
The stadium blast zone. It needs to be in there.
This is Luke's thing. Well, Luke, come on, tell us what your real fix would be here. What you're thinking?
I've told you.
It's the football location fallout zone. That's what it is.
Right.
I told you. I have to have a player from the area in your team in the squad,
in the blast radius.
Right. Well,
I think you don't get it, mine, because Arsenal don't have for years and years, and they've always been French connection. and Henry's been the main guy. So
right. Let's just stop.
And you're not even part of London. You just made up a team there. You're not even. No wonder. No wonder you can't even do it.
I was about to wrap up, but Luke's just gone on some 2003 bias that he's got. But as long as I can remember, Arsenal have had academy products in.
No one said 2003 Invincibles. So are you trying to shoehorn that in?
No, 2003 was when the first foreign team was. The all-foreign team was. No one said Invincible other than you. Thanks for bringing that up. It's worth a watch on Sky Sports Greatest Hits if you want to put that in your planners. As long as I've known, Arsenal have had homegrown players, academy players in the first team. So stick that in your pipe, Luke. Thanks very much, guys, for joining us tonight. Appreciate your time. We're going to be doing a pre-record this week because we're away. So talk about next weekend's results because we won't know them yet. But Luke, if you want to predict Man United's score for this evening,
3-0.
3-0 to Wolves. Great, and
Liam? It should be at least 5, to be honest. Wolves are a complete mess of a team.
Wolves look a mess, I know.
Yeah, there's absolutely no reason why United shouldn't really put them to the sword. I think anything under 4 would be a failure.
We want clean sheet and Rashford 3 goals. Local lad.
Well, by the time everyone's listening to this, we'll know if Luke was right. The local hero wins again.
Fantasy League captain tonight for me, Rashford. I'll take that, Luke.
Oh, while I'm signing off, thank you everyone who joined the Fantasy League. We're over 100 people in the league, which is really good. I'm not sure the exact number. Thank you to everyone who joined in with the Super 6 this weekend. There wasn't any millionaires as part of the group, as far as I'm aware. Luke, Liam, millionaires? No,
I didn't win.
Well, thank you everyone for listening. Please like and follow and subscribe wherever you're listening. Please remember to rate. If you leave us a 5-star review, even if you didn't like it, just do it as a favour to me. That would be really helpful. Please keep up with us on all social media. You'll find all our information there. Everything's at fixitfootballpodcast.com. Cheers, guys. I'll catch you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.